I think Franklin and Tomlin have a lot in common.
I think that's actually a little insulting to Mike, who has actually won the big one, whether it was with somebody else's drafted players or not. Franklin hasn't even Franklin has not gotten to the equivalent of what I would call a conference title
Fair
game
enough.
yet.
He won a conference title game. He beat Wisconsin.
The college football playoff at that point was like a conference title game, a Final Four game, if you will.
I think getting to the Rose Bowl and losing that game to USC is the equivalent of that. They were probably the 5th team in the country that year.
But they weren't the 4th.
Because Washington got in for beating Rutgers and Idaho State.
Can only
beat
who's in front of you on that schedule.
I don't know. Since they both started in 2014, like if you start the clock when Franklin takes over as Penn State's coach, it's pretty close, man. He's 88-39 as a head coach.
I think Mike occasionally, not against the Chiefs, but I think Mike occasionally will get great games out of his team against pretty high-quality opponents, not as much lately. I think Franklin's biggest problem is against big-time opponents.
Okay, I agree with that.
He shrinks all the time.
I would say Tomlin gets his team up for big games, but
he gets them down for bad teams.
Well, but also big games, if we count playoff games, combined score in the first quarter of their last 5 playoff losses is 66 for the bad guys and 0 for us.
Well, he's just letting them get a false sense of confidence.
Is that right?
It's like Muhammad Ali rope-a-dope against George Foreman. Classic technique.
Got it.
I think it's obvious.
It's a horrible look for the Steelers to give out this contract extension.
See, that's I guess the way you frame that there is more agreeable to me, because I think what tires me sometimes when we talk about Mike getting extensions is, other than like a continued body of work, right, which I know is the point here, like more years piled on where they still have a winning or non-losing record, but don't win a playoff game, nothing has really changed about the man as a coach. The results keep being the same, and I put that then on the owner. If you're happy with it, then you're telling your fans in some tacit way you should be too.
But the owner had to do something that he had never done before because Mike was so bad at his job last year. He had to step in and fire an offensive coordinator who had no business being in the NFL.
But here's what's okay, fair,
right?
Obvious. But what does it say that despite doing that, he didn't even just give Mike a 2-year extension, he gave him a 3rd year on
and a gigantic raise.
Right. So does he really... You understand where I'm coming from, right?
Yeah.
Where even though his actions are, I had to step in and do this, he clearly doesn't think it's on the coach.
I think he's nervous. I don't think he wants to be the guy who pushes a Hall of Fame coach out the door.
But here's what's okay. So here's what's crazy about that.
Because I think Mike had leverage. I think Mike could have gone and done TV, or he could have let the contract run out after this year and gone and been someone else's coach.
But who do you think Art cares more about being respected by, or at least you just said he's afraid of being looked at as that guy. Do you think he's more afraid of or cognizant of his perception within Pittsburgh among Steelers fans or nationally?
I'm thinking more with the other owners. I'm thinking more with Roger Goodell and the people that really make decisions in the NFL. I think the commissioner would be like, oh my God, you let this guy walk out the door. What's wrong with you? He's never had a losing season.
But it would look
He's
better.
a great face for football.
But it would look better because he would get snapped up immediately. It would look fine because he would be out of a job for 5 minutes and then he would get a very high-profile job for whichever team had an opening right then, or teams would create openings. We hear that all the time. And he would be out of work for 5 minutes. And on some level, they would say, look, Mike Tomlin's so in demand. There's obviously talk in the NFL all the time about, are there enough minority head coaches? They would say the NFL is a colorblind league, which we know it's not really in these situations, because Mike just got hired in about 6 seconds.